I call it the Million Muslim March. It's a group of migrants from the Middle East, but not just the Middle East, from Somalia, from Afghanistan, from Pakistan, who are making their way to Europe by any means possible, by boat, by land, by rail, for the promise of free stuff. Don't take it from me, take it from Angela Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany, who has thrown open the borders, or at least did for a while. Well, on their way to Germany and to Calais, where they hope to get across the English Channel, they have to go through other European countries. And joining us now from London, a man of Hungarian descent, is our friend George Igler from the Discourse Institute, who will talk to us about this Million Muslim March, and especially from his homeland, Hungary, and how they are dealing with this wave. George, welcome, and thank you for joining us today from London. I've seen the statistics from the United Nations that says 3/4 of these migrants are men, and only a small rounding error are women and children. It's sort of the opposite of what we think of when we think of refugees. We think of women and children first. And let me just show you a couple of clips from the border. I believe this is between Serbia and Hungary. Hundreds of migrants, every single one of them men. Well, I'll just let the pictures do the talking. Here, take a look. Now, George, I don't know what country would possibly allow a violent mob like that into their country, wearing masks, throwing things at police. It couldn't be more threatening. It really looks like a gang, and yet they demand free passage through Hungary, not even to stay in Hungary, but to move on to the really good welfare in Germany and perhaps the UK. What sane country wouldn't block the borders?
If you believe the vast majority of the media in Europe and the picture of this phenomenon, this real biblical exodus into Europe, and it's not really out of the Middle East. I mean, according to Hungary's own figures, over 100 countries are represented here, and only 1/3 are Syrian. If you listen to the media, the only sane, the only moral thing to do would be to throw open the borders. And there's another question in that. But specifically nailed down the first point you raised, again, looking at Hungary's own figures. And the reason why the country has been one upon which so much focus has been falling is the desire by the nation's government to adhere very strictly to European rules that require registration. And according to their own figures, so it's important to say these are only people who either apply to be registered or are taken by the authorities to camps to be registered. 81.3% are male. These figures come from the Hungarian government at the end of August. And 66% are males aged 18 to 34. So there's military-aged males. And I think Mark Stein recently wrote that, this isn't the demography of a refugee grouping. This is the demography of an invading army.
Mm-hmm. Well, and if they don't get everything they demand, as you can see on the border right now, they immediately turn to violence. I think that some of them are just swept up in this gold rush mania. They've been promised everything by Angela Merkel. They hear probably directly from Facebook or email or text messages of friends who have already arrived. And so even if they are not malicious in intent, even if we're not talking about Islamists, even if we're not talking about Islamic State embedded, people who are stowaways, even regular folks who are just shopping for the best welfare in Europe, their expectations are so high. It's like that movie Elysium, where you leave this squalid, ruined planet of Earth to go to this heaven-like satellite. I mean, it was a fictitious drama, but how could they possibly meet their expectations of free everything? It's almost like they're getting their 72 virgins in heaven just by going to Europe.
You very much put your finger on the pulse there, and this is what politically Europe is struggling with. Within the European Union, Germany is the major power. It pays the bills. And so consequently, there's a desire to blame every other nation when Germany really is at fault here. To give you an understanding, when Angela Merkel made the announcement that Germany would accept 800,000 of these, well, migrants, but really illegal immigrants is what we're talking about here. No one uses the correct terminology here. At least the BBC is starting to change. It's no longer referred to a refugee crisis. It's referred to as a migrant crisis. But illegally crossing a frontier without paperwork, unless under the UNHCR's own rules, you're going to claim asylum, that makes you an illegal immigrant. This is what these individuals are doing, no matter how much pitiable their situation might be. And now, the first thing that happened after Angela Merkel made this announcement was that flights from Baghdad to Turkey, daily flights, were tripled. It is erroneous, really, to call this a crisis. This has been caused by Germany, and there's a very real and simple solution to all of this that will prevent the entire southeastern corridor of Europe being turned into a transit zone with people drowning themselves or hurling themselves against fences and barbed wire. This is Germany. If Angela Merkel, in her senility, likes to be, considers having selfies taken with young Arab men to be preferable to the future of her country, and wants 800,000 this year, another 500,000 next year, another 500,000 next year, to, her words, change and transform Germany, then what Germany should do is just instruct its national carrier, Lufthansa, to fly flights to Serbia, to fly flights to Greece, to fly flights to Turkey, and pick these people up. And then we wouldn't have a problem.
That's a great point. I mean, why doesn't she deploy the Luftwaffe? And I don't know what kind of air force, but you're right, they have Lufthansa. Send the planes into Turkey and take you. At least then you wouldn't just be getting the survival of the fittest, the young men who could make the journey. At least then you might get the odd woman and child.
Here in London, the Prime Minister of Lebanon was visiting David Cameron. Now he would know because 1/4 of Lebanon's refugees are now Syrian migrants. He said 1 in every 50 is an ISIS supporter. So we have this absurd situation where, I as a European national, if I was to fly to Hungary, I'd have everything short of a flashlight shown up my backside to prevent the possibility of Islamic terrorism, i.e. security that I need to go through an airport. But again, we have a media that is dominating a narrative in a sort of emotionalized, almost orchestrated journalism that is saying it's morally unacceptable to not throw open the borders and to let in a swarm of people amongst whom it is ISIS's declared intention to ship people in. I mean, they said in January, we're going to send 500,000 migrants to Europe to create chaos. We've had several European security officials saying that they are shipping terrorists over. But to give you a bit of perspective from a European point of view, if you raise any such issue as this, if you just take it as a matter of policy, that we have a situation here which only has bad solutions and worse solutions, rather than some sort of moral question to which the only answers are fling open the borders or you're evil, you want children to die, then you are shouted down, you are marginalized. So there's something really very
I want to ask you one last question.
Strange happening in Europe, and one can only really see a very distressing security situation evolving from that.
Yeah, when you say 1 in 50, I'm shocked that the number's so low. Last question for you, George. You mentioned orchestrated journalism. I don't believe in conspiracy theories when it comes to journalism, but I do believe in groupthink. I do believe in people who are generally of the same political mindset. I call it the media party. It's not centrally planned. It's just everyone following their common beliefs, their distaste for the West, their guilt for being white liberals. In Europe, perhaps some strange sort of self-abuse to make up for the Holocaust 75 years ago. I think that's definitely on Angela Merkel's mind. Let me show a clip of the Hungarian Prime Minister referring to this in a recent address he gave to all of Hungary's diplomats. Let me play a clip from that, and I'll come back to you for your closing thoughts. Here, take a look.
Azt kell mondanom, hogy a legtöbb európai ország, most nevet nem említek, egyet sem, kímélendő a külügyminiszter idejét, hogy ne kelljen fogadni nagyköveteket. Tehát egyetlen ország nevét sem fogom említeni, de felelősségem tudatában mondom önöknek, hogy az európai államok 90%-ában szakadék van a nép véleménye és álláspontja és az elit által folytatott politika között. Ez egy demokráciában komoly probléma. Ezt a különbséget egy darabig el lehet fedni, mondjuk irányított újságírással. És ha önök kinézik egy-egy országnak a sajtóját, én minden nap megnézem külön-külön, nekem nem mondja senki, hogy ott nincs irányított újságírás. Bennünket vádolnak a sajtószabadság problémával, de ha valaki kinézi, vagy kinyitja mondjuk a teljes magyar sajtót, hogy hogyan értelmezi a menekült válságot, megnézi, hány hang szólal meg, hányfajta vélemény jelenik meg, hogyan futnak szana szét ezek a vélemények, akkor egy sokkal színesebb palettát fog találni, mint az egyébként magukat nálunk, egyébként alaptalanul, de fejlettebbnek gondoló országok sajtóját áttekintve. Ez nem filozófiai kérdés, meg sajtójogi kérdés, ez a tényeknek a kérdése. Minden reggel ott a bizonyíték, hogy ezekben a kérdésekben igenis létezik irányított vélemény. Én nem vádolok senkit azzal, hogy ő személyesen irányítja, még azt sem, hogy a politikai vezetők irányítják ezeket a véleményeket, csak azt akarom mondani, hogy úgy vannak fölépítve a nyugati társadalmak, hogy ott hosszú időn, ez a több hetet értek, nem éveket, bizonyos időtartamon keresztül lehetséges olyan politikát folytatni, megtámogatva a nyilvánossággal, amelyet egyébként a nép nagy része nem támogat. De ott sem lehet örökké.
So there you have the Prime Minister of Hungary, who makes the good point, and I believe him, that the free press in Hungary is actually a more diverse and more robust free press because it's not all cheerleading for this million Muslim march. Last thoughts to you, George.
Well, you know, Hungary is usually a very confusing country to most journalists in the world, and it's because it's the complexity of the language. It's rather prosaic, is the answer, and there's a belief really amongst journalists that their inability to look in, if that makes sense, means that Hungarians can't look out. Hungarians are very aware of what's going on in the rest of Europe, and there's a general understanding. Amongst journalists, most journalists are left-wing. Hungarian politics is represented as much by the far left as the far right. Both sides are usually robust. And they just go to Hungary, they talk to left-wing journalists, and they leave with a very different picture of the realities on the ground here, rather in Hungary. You've got to appreciate the reason why this fence went up is that Hungary was on the course to receive 300,000 of these migrants this year. That's more than twice the national birth rate. So to give you an understanding, that's the equivalent, if you're British, that's the equivalent of 2 million people storming up the Channel Tunnel. Yeah. So there's a level of misunderstanding here of what the country has been dealing with, and also how politics has responded. In reality, it's usually portrayed that Viktor Orban has cynically taken advantage of the situation, when in reality it's what is remaining of the political left that's taking advantage of this. And this is a distressing situation and could lead to a lot of trouble, because if there is violence, if someone is killed, and there is terrorism in revenge for this, which is easy to see, then what you have is a situation in which the Hungarian left is completely marginalized. The EU wants to get rid of Viktor Orban, and all we have is Jobbik, the true far right, who are the opposition, waiting to take their place.
Very interesting. I tell you, I've learned a lot from you today, George. The most incredible part is that 81% of the migrants into Hungary are men, and 2/3 of them young men. Great to talk with you about these heavy matters. Look forward to catching up with you again, maybe as soon as next week. That'd be great.
Brilliant. I look forward to it.
Thanks, George Igler of the Discourse Institute.